So here we are about 10 minutes in, and it's starting to change color quite a bit. It's much less translucent than it was. It's looking more opaque. It's starting to look more like a color that I associate with a finished product of soap. But as you can see, it's still very liquidy. As it gets thicker, it's easier to stir it more vigorously. I mean, you really need to make sure that you've got a completely mixed material, because you don't want any little pockets of lye, because they will burn people. So you have to be very, very careful, because you are making a product that starts out dangerous and becomes something people use on their faces. So when you're making soap, you must really pay attention. Sometimes I've been known to walk away in the middle of making a white sauce, but I don't do it when I'm making soap. Okay, so here we are, and we're 25 minutes in. And as you can see, it's starting to have the consistency of a thin cake batter. It doesn't stir quite like a liquid any longer. And it has definitely become sort of a pale yellow color, as opposed to, it's pale yellow and opaque, as opposed to the sort of brownish, translucent color that it was when I started. So that's at 25 minutes, and I will definitely take a video at trace to show you what that looks like, because that was one of the things that I had the worst time with when I started soap making. Was, is that trace? Is that trace? Is that trace? I'm very impatient, so this is a hard process for me, because every time I make soap and I'm standing here for half an hour, I think I must have measured something wrong. It's never going to work. But it's always worked so far. I've never had a batch fail, so far so good. Hope this isn't the one. Okay, we are now at the point that we call trace, which is when we can see that as we dip into the soap and draw across the surface, we can see the line that's left by it. It's very difficult to see under these lighting conditions. There we go. There's a good line. So it's definitely turning into soap as opposed to being a liquid at this point. There's a good line. So now is when we make our addition of any things we're going to add. This is when I would put in the honey, but since I'm making a vegan soap, add some lavender buds. And I'll stir those through, and even though they're lovely and purple right now, as the soap ages, they will turn sort of a pale brown. And the pigments in natural herbs are not strong, and so these ideas we've got about things being lovely and bright purple and bright pink have to do with mineral pigments. Okay, so that is ready to pour into the mold now. Can you hold the camera for me, please? Okay. So I happen to know that this is a mold that will exactly take a 2-pound batch of soap. It's an experimental batch, so I only made 2 pounds of it. This is just a plain old Tupperware that I got at the thrift store. Last time I made soap, I used glass molds, and that was a mistake. I could not get the soap out. I wound up having to destroy almost half a batch just to get it out of the glass molds. So plastic molds, because they're flexible, and that mold was completely greased before I started everything. So it's got nice little flakes of lavender in it, and I'm going to put one more little sprinkle of lavender on the top of it, actually. Okay, I'll sprinkle lavender flowers on top of it, and then when I cut the soap, those lavender flowers on the top will be on the one edge of the soap. So this is when you do any decorative stuff like that. The next batch is going to have cardamom seeds. Okay, so the other thing is, now this has to sit for a day or two before it's going to be ready to cut. It has to harden up. It'll stay pretty liquid, and it'll stay pretty warm for the next couple of days. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap it and put a cover on it. Oops, I've torn my glove. I'll wrap it and put a cover on it and leave it to sit for 2 days all wrapped up and nice and warm. And then in a couple of days it'll be ready to cut. And after we're all done, we will wind up with a whole bunch of bars of soap with lavender in them, organic coconut oil. And I'm just going to weigh and see. That made me 3 pounds and 4 ounces of soap.
And how long did it take you?
Well, that trace took about 45 minutes almost exactly, so it took me 2 hours, I guess. I can make a larger batch of soap in the same amount of time. Oh, also, the person holding the camera asked me why I don't use an egg beater when I'm doing the trace, and you can use an immersion blender because the blades are below the surface, but you don't want to use a hand mixer because that can splash quite a bit. Anything else?
I can't think of anything.
Okay, well, that is my soap making for the day. That's my urban homesteading activity for the day. I'll see you later.